The year's 1995. Angela loved the way her hair flowed in the wind as she flew through the pristine and cool night air. All I want to do is have some fun, blared on her earbuds attached to the portable cassette player secured around her upper arm. She slowly drifted through the desert canyon air without glancing at the mountain peaks to her left and right. Her knowledge of each turn, nook and cranny was permanently burned into her 17-year-old subconscious memory. She bobbed her head and silently mouthed the lyrics along with Cheryl. This was, after all, her own personal playground. So what if it happened to be in the middle of Joshua Tree National Park? She had defiantly stated to her older sister before heading out for the night of flying. It's a secluded canyon. The only people who show up are old LA hippies looking for a place to get stoned. If they did manage to see me, they'll think I'm just tripping. It's no big deal, she said in defence with one foot out the door. She shut out the discussion with her sister and gazed at the sky. She enjoyed the stars the most. Moonless nights were always the best. Easier to see the millions of pinpoints in the Milky Way and less of a chance of being seen. She slowly came to a stop and hovered on her back while gazing at the stars, wondering if her ancestors came from the heavens or were just another type of the human species. She had asked her Uncle Giorgio during one of his rare visits a few months before. He didn't know, but he told her that he liked to think they came from the stars. 2 Avatorians, male and female, seeking some place to colonize. Too bad the humans were already here, he would chuckle. He told her they stayed because they saw something intriguing in the humans. Compassion, love, and a thirst for knowledge. The few who spoke of peace and hope outshone those who strive for power and riches. This was what kept the Avatorians on Earth. Once they made their decision, the ability to return to their homeworld or to seek out another place to colonize had been taken away. How or why, he didn't know. Of course, Giorgio reminded her it was just a story, and he was not sure if it was really true or not. Draco the Dragon was directly overhead tonight. She traced the shape of the constellation with her finger down past Ursa Minor towards the body of Ursa Major. She drifted her hand from side to side in rhythm with Sheryl Crow's guitar. She rolled over and glanced at the blackness of the ground. She estimated it was a little over 400 feet to the valley floor below. By dead reckoning, she triangulated the 3,600-foot peak to her right and the 3,700-foot peak to her left. With the subtle light from a million stars, she could make out the course of the dry creek bed running east to west and another one intersecting from the south straight below. It was a popular intersection for weekend campers, but tonight there was no sign of life below. No campfires, no lanterns, no glow of cigarettes or joints, as campers would find comfort in a drag of unhealthful smoke. She wondered why anyone would smoke. She remembered the lesson from the blackened tissue on display in last year's biology class. Tonight is Wednesday. Bah, I wish I didn't have school tomorrow, she thought. Drifting west, Angela moved past the creek junction below and the peaks now behind toward an opening in the canyon. The dry lake bed was completely surrounded by mountains. 3 miles long and a mile wide, it was the perfect place for her to hover and soak in the immensity of the night sky. She stopped in her favourite spot and rolled over to face the sky. She really wanted to stay long enough to see the constellation Orion stick its head over the eastern horizon. But that would mean staying up most of the night and risking the brightness of the revealing moonrise. She would never hear the end of it from her sister if she did. Just a few more minutes and I'll head back. She watched the star Deneb so intently she could sense its movement as it inched across the sky. The clack of Angela's cassette tape player startled her as it clicked off after the last song. She always felt uneasy with even the slightest noise in the middle of such a pristinely quiet night in the desert. Suddenly, she felt unusually warm. Now that's weird. She glanced at the surrounding landmarks and noticed that she was starting to descend. Rolling over to face the dry lake bed, she noticed that there were new shadows cast by the starlight in a spot where normally there was nothing but sand. She banked steeply to her right and headed toward the northern cliffs. The warmth was gone, and she regained altitude. Her curiosity prompted her to hover feet first and turn, facing the middle of the lake bed. Multiple shadows moved, and once again she felt her body get warm. The air around her was still cool, but her body itself was feeling warm, almost like a fever. She felt control of her altitude slip and she began descending. At the same moment, she was blinded by light from below. Bathed in bright white, she instinctively covered her eyes with her hands, hoping she could get a glimpse between her fingers. She continued descending. She knew if she was forced to go to ground, she would not be able to run as fast as she could fly. She could feel panic rising in her chest. The adrenaline gave her strength to resist the descent. She turned away from the lights and headed for the canyon as fast as she could. They saw me. Who are they? Why are they here? Questions flooded her mind as she tried to stifle the panic. Forcing herself to focus, she dove toward the canyon entrance in an attempt to gain some much-needed speed and momentum. I've got to get out of here and get safe. Where was the heat coming from, and why did I stop flying? Her mind was racing. She could hear distant shouts and the sound of some kind of vehicle engine firing up behind her. It sounded like a VW, possibly a dune buggy. She didn't want to chance looking back to find out. The lights were still shining on her, but they were dimmer as she reached the canyon opening. She skimmed the ground, barely avoiding the snag of the sage and shadowed brush along the valley floor. With the increased speed and momentum, she shot straight into the night sky and out of the beams of lights. "You fools, you friggin' idiots! Get the light back on her now!" The woman screamed at the two men as they jumped to task and slid into the bucket seats of the four-seater sandrail. The woman was crouched in the back, gripping the back of a strange-looking cannon, in cables and coiled copper wrappings around the barrel. The ribbed balloon tires dug into the sand as the driver gunned the grass. A row of floodlights came on across the top of the roll bar above the driver's head. The man in the passenger seat struggled with the portable spotlight as they raced after the escaping flyer. The woman was knocked back into the seat by the acceleration. She quickly stood up and grabbed the twin grips of the cannon, hanging on with all her might as the vehicle bounced along the dry lake bed. She managed her balance and pressed the button on the microphone clipped to her shoulder. "Coming your way." 2 clicks over the speaker acknowledged the listener on the other radio received her message. Angela levelled off at 3,600 feet, even with the highest peak off to the north of the canyon wall. She glanced back over her shoulder at the approaching buggy with its bouncing floodlights and a single spotlight beam searching the sky. Her luck was holding. They hadn't locked her in, at least not yet. Her heart was pounding. She thought it would burst. She turned, and along the edge of the canyon as it gently snaked through an S-shaped curve. "I've got to calm down and get my nerves." She knew the canyon would straighten out before reaching the creek junction. At least that would give her a vantage point to see the buggy approach. "I could go straight up and just get some distance, but it would be easier to see me. I usually fly east. This time I'll go south. The old creek climbs into the mountains and I can disappear there. No way can they follow me." She descended toward the creek bed at an angle, building up her momentum. The sandrail reached the canyon entrance, bouncing and sliding left as the driver dodged the rocks and the Joshua trees. The man with the spotlight scanned the sky as he tried to compensate for the sudden movements of the sandrail. "Crank it up to 1,500, Matt," the woman stated into the microphone. 1,200 isn't enough." She let go of the mic and grabbed the back of the cannon with both hands. "Try to get us through that S-turn without flipping us over," she caustically barked at the driver. Angela could hear the roar of the buggy entering the turn of the canyon. The sounds of the engine echoed and reverberated off the canyon walls, making it sound like an army of vehicles. She turned and caught a quick glance of the lights flickering on the mountain sides, casting dancing shadows of sagebrush along the sides of the creek bed. Jackrabbits scattered in terror at the sound of approaching vehicles, and a once pursuing bobcat turned tail and retreated to the shadows. She doubled back towards the straight section of the dry creek bed, skimming a few feet above the sand as fast as she could. She saw the junction of the southern creek coming up quickly as the light from the approaching buggy caught her while she was preparing to fly toward escape. As she started banking into the turn, she glimpsed another vehicle parked just east of her path. Lights beamed from the vehicle, blinding her before she could cover her eyes. Realizing that she had been cornered, she reacted instinctively and shot straight up into the air, flying as fast as her heart and adrenaline would permit. Immediately, she felt the heat again. She darted sideways, gaining altitude, trying her best to get out of the heat, but it was still there, following her as she flew. The earbuds from her portable Walkman began to bake in her ears. She ripped them out as she jerked the player off her arm, letting them fall away to ground below. She turned to look at the approaching buggy coming down the straight section of the creek bed. The spotlight from the buggy swung across the sky to meet her. She turned around and saw the converging buggy with lights blaring. She was slowing down and couldn't gather enough strength to continue flying. The heat doubled in intensity, and she could feel pain burning in her bones, radiating out into her muscles. She spun around, hoping somehow the maneuver might relieve the pain from the heat, but without success. She was losing altitude, falling toward the intersection of the creek bed. The pain was becoming unbearable. She was starting to free fall, plummeting the remaining distance to the ground. Why are they doing this to me? I'm going to die. Confused her thoughts as she continued to fall like a wounded bird to the ground. Just as she braced for impact, the heat disappeared. She hung there, spinning slowly in the air. Somehow she had managed to stop her descent. She was just feet from the ground, and she was just hovering. She felt the spinning slow and stop as both vehicles converged upon her, their lights blaring, making it hard to see the occupants. The seconds she hovered seemed like hours. Her senses were on full overload, her heart pumping rapidly, and she realised she was hyperventilating. She felt on the verge of passing out. "Leave me alone, go away!" she screamed as loud as she could. What are they waiting for? She wondered. She looked up and saw the star Deneb flickering in the darkness, as if winking at her to tell her everything would be okay. She could hear a woman speaking as the men got out of their vehicles. She started to ascend again, but was instantly hit by the intense heat. Her bones felt like pins of red-hot steel melting from the heat. "Please stop!" she cried out. Curling up in a ball, she closed her eyes and fell to the ground. The sand softened the blow. Although the heat had disappeared, she was too weak and exhausted to fly away. She slowly stretched out, face down in the sand. The coolness of the sand was oddly comforting. She heard footsteps approaching as she tried to roll over, when suddenly she felt a sharp prick in her neck. All she could think of was scorpions, as her mind grew fuzzy and she fell into a fitful sleep.
And that was the incomparable Sandy Denny with the Music Weaver. Beautiful. I nearly saw her once. I think I've mentioned this before. Probably have hundreds of times. I nearly saw her performing in Putney once. But I went to see Traffic instead, which were wonderful. But, yeah, God, isn't that awful? All those people you could have seen in those days. And before that, you heard, wow, what an amazing story, Helen. Tell me how you got hold of this story.
I put out a call online for authors. So I wanted, a load of authors to send in some new work or work that
you could read.
Yeah, I could read out online. And I was originally going to have more because obviously we were going to have an extra actor to read. Yeah. Obviously we couldn't do that, so I had to.
But hopefully he can do it next time.
Yes, yeah.
Because Kevin is our other actor friend who comes on the programme, and he's superb. So the two of you together be fantastic. Yeah, be really good.
So this one is the book is called Airborne, and it's written by Timothy Trimble, who's based in Seattle in Washington. Mm-hmm. And he got in touch and said that he would love me to read one of his chapters of his new books, which is actually already out. I think he's actually writing some more.
Can we buy it in Waterstones?
Not in Waterstones, but it is available on Amazon.co.uk.
Right.
And it's available on paperback and also Kindle. Mm-hmm. And obviously it's available on Amazon.com and places like that. But yeah, you can get it over here, and it's already got a couple of reviews, really good reviews.
It's excellent.
It's a wonderful sci-fi book.
It is.
About the Avatorians. And it's a young adult, but I reckon that anyone...
Well, I really enjoyed listening to it. I thought it was marvellous. Absolutely spellbinding. Well done. Wonderful. If you're listening, Timothy, that was amazing, and beautifully read by you, of course, Helen.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, that's the thing with radio. I think you can hold I was imagining it all in my head, and of course when you read a book it's exactly the same thing, but it is lovely.
Very descriptive, which is lovely when you're reading a book and you don't want, you know, loads and loads and loads and loads of dialogue. Some books have loads of dialogue.
They do.
But when it's just descriptive like that, it's just so lovely to...
I just love getting into a book. I love it. I do hate a book which kind of fobs you off at the end, and I've just read one of those which no, that wasn't, and that did, I mean, it was great, sort of started out, but it's like some people have got no idea how to finish a book, and it all just kind of either is a ending and you think, God, I've wasted my time, or you think, well, what actually, how, you know, oh dear. I mean, I like it that it leaves you wanting more. That's always good, because
it's like a cliffhanger, but...
Yeah, I do like that. Anyway, well done. Thank you very much, Timothy Trimble.
One day that will probably end up as a film. I can see that being a film.
Absolutely. And yes, Helen's got first rights on the acting there, Timothy.
I don't know if I can play a 17-year-old, but I'm still hanging on in there, actually. So you never know.
Okay, right, well, we're going to have a track now from The Thrills, and then we're going to hear another story. I think you're all really coming in for a lovely treat this afternoon. And it's wet and horrible, so I doubt if it is wet and horrible in Seattle, but it is here. It's ghastly. Okay, here's The Thrills. Oh, and this is called Big Sur.